I will say that there's nothing wrong with that not being your collecting goal. Because that was my collecting goal for a long time. I would just buy. And I mean, I've got somewhere between 2,000 and 3,000 games I think right now. I have this thing where I can't sell anything. There's no CD like that. But what I have done recently is I went to my game room and I said, wow, like, this is ridiculous.
No, it really, dude, I can't even, like, I have no room on my shelves.
Yeah.
And I need more shelves, but I have no room for the shelves. So I got stuff piling up, like, games in front of games in front of games on my shelves.
You still have games on my floor in front of my shelves. You guys saw them? Yeah. They're still just laying there. They've been laying there since October.
Yeah. I can speak to this guy. Like, his living room looks like his game room threw up into the living room.
It looks like 1985 through 92 just puked all over my apartment. But no, like I got a Tekken arcade cabinet in my living room. I've got a PS3 and an Xbox 360, the demo units from GameStop in my living room because I had nowhere else to put them.
Well, I mean, I don't know if y'all are like this, but it's just not necessarily having to own the games, it's having the ability to just play those games. Because me and you talked about this last night, that whenever I was younger, my family didn't have a lot of money, so it's like getting into regular Nintendo was me and my brothers busting ass to basically buy one, used of course, and then going to rent games.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, it's just getting, like, oh yeah, my buddy Jay had that one, and I never got to play it. And now it's kind of like a lot of those games you can go back and get for a reasonable price if, you know, they're not idiots, basically, about how much it's, yeah.
Or if they don't care. We've run into a lot of sellers that they know that there's some value in games and like they don't care.
Those are the best kind of.
Like the lady we bought that whole tub of games for $20, she literally didn't care. She was like, I just want it out of my way.
You know, like Ryder was just saying, you know, not a lot of money. You know, me neither. We would get a Nintendo and my mom would be like, this is for all 6 of y'all. There you go. It's a cheap way out. So, you know, birthdays we might get a game or, you know, Christmas stuff like that. I might have had like 30 NES games. Now I'm at like 520. You know, so my son, when I first took the Nintendo up in his room, he came over that following weekend. He was like, yo, Dad, what's that? I'm like, what's what? He's like, that great box in my room. I'm like, well, that's a Nintendo. And he gave me this stupid look, and he's like, that's not a Nintendo, because his version of a Nintendo is a Wii. I'm like, no, dude, this came out, I was about your age when this one came out. And he's like, you got any games on it? Can I play it? I'm like, yeah, come here. I was like, pick any one of those, and his eyes got this big. He's like, really? I'm like, yes. So we just, you know, come over and grab like a stack of games, let's go play. You know, he likes Cooper, Donkey Kong, Mario Brothers, all the classics. I think it's funny because this is a kid who will play like The Force Unleashed 2 on PlayStation 3 and be like badass at it. And then put in Mario Brothers and die in the first world and be like, this game sucks. I'm like, no, you just suck at this game.
That kind of reminds me of another kind of a reason why I collect now. Because as a kid, I was always going through my head, what would it be like to own all these games? Because I would look at the Nintendo Power Series coming out. Or like the Game Pro and they'll say Funko Land and they list all the games and train. What would it be like to own all these games? Maybe one day. Maybe one day.
So these are all good reasons to start collecting. Let's talk about bad reasons to start collecting. If you're getting into collecting to make money, you're not a collector. And that is the wrong reason to get into this hobby.
Especially now.
Especially right now because the prices are so inflated. I'm ready for it to tank. I'm ready for the hobby to just like take a nosedive because
you really think it's going to just totally nosedive, or do you think it's going to be like a generational thing?
I think it would not completely, but probably a generational thing. You know, because like for me, you know, like my old school is Atari, NES, Super Nintendo, Genesis,
right.
PlayStation, PS2, you know, Nintendo 64. I was an adult already when those came out. So, where yes, that is becoming retro, it's not that childhood link like, you know, Billy said, or Jared said earlier. You know, so I'm ready for, I guess, the NES to start, you know, nosediving. And people are like, well, your game's going to be worthless. I'm like, well, I'm not getting them because they're worth anything. You know, because when I was buying them, they were worthless. You know, and really, what's the worth of the value of a game? What someone's willing to pay, I guess.
No, I don't keep track of on the like the value of like the Atari system. But wasn't there a time where it was a lot more sought after and a lot higher price? So we've kind of seen that curve on the Atari start to dive down.
I think we're already seeing it on the NES.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, look at Super Nintendo games.
I think Super Nintendo's coming down first.
Yeah.
So, and Nintendo 64 is coming up, but I don't know that that's going to last that long. And
64
PS1,
is ridiculous.
PS2 might wind up having an increase.
Yeah, I have this thing about disc-based games because they have a shelf life, no matter how long you take them.
Yeah, they did.
And, well, cards last a lot longer than a disc. And I kind of feel like disc-based media in general, because of the lower shelf life, will probably never hit a peak. I think it's going to be fairly flat until the things just don't work anymore. And with the disc-based games, I mean, you can emulate PS2 games on your computer at this point. So in 5 years, you can do PS3, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that might be, I mean, because to me personally, I do like disc-based games because there is some nostalgia built into it. But I would rather play a card-based game on an old-school CRT monitor with a controller. Once you start getting to PS2 and up, and I mean, if I wanted to emulate it, I wouldn't necessarily have a problem doing it with disc-based.
So going back to how we're talking about the NES and the Super NES, just seem to, they're going up together, essentially. Of course, NES went up first, and then Super Nintendo went up right behind it. I think a lot has to do with the fact that with Atari and everything, we didn't have too many games that had sequels. Now, with regular Nintendo, Super Nintendo, Nintendo 64, you've got MegaMan, Final Fantasy, all that stuff. And it's kind of like you got people going back and wanting every one of them.
Yeah. So, getting to some tips right here. We're talking about like NES and Super Nintendo has just been spiking up the price. If you're collecting, one thing that I'm trying to do right now, like I'm trying to be ahead of the curve with Nintendo 64. So a lot of the rare games I have. You know, I basically just need to fill in gaps with comments. I've got the Sculptor's Cut. You know, I think I'm missing like Worms, Armageddon, and that might be it for like super rare stuff. But all the Blockbuster exclusives, all that stuff, I've got them all. So, because that'll probably be the next one.
Yeah, and just if you are interested in collecting for the 64, check out the Blockbuster exclusives because some of them are still extremely reasonable.
Hey, you know what? Actually,
Stunt Racer.
What's that, like 35, 25, 35
Yeah,
dollars?
you can get it for cheaper, all of them is
Yeah.
too. I mean, yeah, like Blitz, the Blitz special editions.
I picked that up for $1 recently.
Exactly. So there are definitely still deals to be had. You're just gonna have to be diligent in your research.
Yeah, you know, even stuff like go to GameStop because right now they're starting to fire sale all of their old PlayStation 2 stuff and their Wii stuff and whatnot like that. 10, 15 years down the road, you know, Wii is going to be retro.
Yeah.
Wii is, you can get super cheap right now.
If there are games on the Wii that you were really looking into getting, and they're hard to find, get them now.
It may not make it past the crash. We may see the peak in the next year or so with Wii just because of where retro is right now and it levels out. And I mean, if the next former system goes to download only anyways,
I hope it does not.
there's
It will.
collecting's going to be gone as far as that goes in the generation. No one's going to care.
Well, it's almost like, I mean, who up here is gonna really collect for the PS4 or the Xbox One? I'm not.
I'm not thinking about that, but, you know, I mean,
But now we kind of collect now because I don't trade my games in now.
yeah, I don't need
PS3,
Right.
Wii, and all that. I used to all the time. I'd go if I needed the game in, the new game came out, whatever we would do, take our games and get screwed by GameStop by getting a couple of bucks for each one.
Yeah.
I don't do that anymore.
I stopped doing that in the PS2 days because, I mean, yeah, like probably everybody, this new game came out, and I'm like, okay, I either buy this game or I don't need. I got this shelf full of games, let me take them in and get rid of them. And one day I looked at my shelf and I had like 2 PlayStation 2 games. And this is when the console was still hot, you know, in its heyday. And I was like, okay, I can't just have nothing to play.
But would you ever collect for the PS4?
Ask me that in 15 years.
All right.
Well, when say when a good game finally comes, if a game finally comes out.
Hey, Resident's awesome.
It's a lot weirder for collecting for PS4, PS3, or Xbox 360 or Xbox One because gaming now has become such a larger industry than it ever was before. Like even PS2 is pretty big, they still have rare games on there, but these current gen consoles and the last gen with 360 and PS3 has so many units out there and so many people are buying it that there really isn't a whole lot of rare stuff for it. There are some, don't get me wrong, there are some, but it's also so readily available. I mean, you always hear Call of Duty selling 1 billion copies, but no one really pays attention to the Tales of Xillia Collector's Edition, which only has 18,000 available.
Right.
So, it's like there are collectible things on there, but I don't really foresee anyone